to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Welcome to the RunnerX podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline. I'm here with Coach Valerie. We're back in the gym, and hopefully this records well. I think we might have a little echo, but that's okay. You guys love us anyway, right? No wind is what counts. There's a lot of wind today. Valerie, I want to talk about something that you mentioned last week that I thought was really, really important. You were talking about this idea that we talk about pose, fall, pull, and that people are only concentrating on the last part, the pull. They're totally, at the time I think you were talking about that they totally forget the fall, but you just said they forget the pose too. So basically people are learning pose, fall, pull, but only working on the pull. How do we get them back into this idea that it's all three of them together? Is there a mindset shift? Is there a...
I think it's part of it for me, and I know by the way, when I first started, because we're action oriented and running is an action, pull is the action, right? Pose is, so you're always pulling just to keep something kind of in mind, because those of you that are like, I'm not really sure what she's saying. So pose is basically like the running pose, the figure four. And you have to practice that when you're not running. Okay. Because the reality is, what is a running pose? It's called a shaky balance, but it's an alignment. It's holding your ears, shoulders, hips, lifted ankle in line over the ball of the foot. You have to hold that your entire run. Yeah. And there's no one that's going to argue that. So people, I tell people the upper body part, the ears over the shoulders, over the hips, is how you should stand, how you should sit, how you should do everything you do. It's the natural order, if you will. Right. So the challenge then is for most of us that we kind of forget it's 68% of our body weight. Right. And so when people talk about have tight shoulders or things like that, I always say, well, first of all, let's work on how you hold yourself. Mm-hmm. And then absolutely we can work on that. And you have to remember, when I'm on the ground, I need to be in the running pose. It's the most efficient place to be. It's the safest place to be. It's where your body wants to be. So pulling to pose is your job. Right. So if pull is all you think of, you're forgetting the pose and the fall. Well, not even fall yet, but just that I need to pull to recover pose. Okay. There's a purpose to my pull. I'm not just pulling for the sake of pulling. Right. It's not just, I'm pulling. There's a purpose behind it. I'm pulling to recover pose so I can fall. Okay. So body can only fall from pose. Okay. And the pull is a response to the fall. And by the way, guys, it's a natural response. This is the funnest part of it, is that when you actually let your body fall forward, the foot will naturally pull. What we're doing is helping you feel that action, of course, and then making you better prepared to handle that. However, if I just pull, which is an active muscle contraction, right? You're just going to wear yourself out. Right. And then you're just out there and you're still just moving your arms and legs, really, instead of understanding that your body's connected as a unit and you use gravity to fall. Okay. And so, let's go back to that idea of you fall from pose. Correct. Okay. So if I'm not, we've talked about the fact that when we're drilling, we're bringing our ankle up higher, right? Correct. All the way under the hip. Right, all the way under the hip. But when I'm running, I'm just really breaking the surface of the ground, correct? Correct. And so the nuance, this is something we were talking about too, is that pull is really just out, it's just the slight breaking of the ground, and you're in that, your hamstring will really bring your leg up, and that's how you let yourself go. Right, in the fall. Right. Okay. So if I'm just concentrating on pull, I'm overtaxing my muscles, I'm overworking, and I can't let go and fall. Correct. Okay. Because again, it goes back to this. Like, say we were on a treadmill. Let's just go this way. It's a machine. We've all been on it, right? On a treadmill. Well, when you're on a treadmill, there's no falling. Right. You're in place. Right, guys? And just so you guys know, everybody falls. We wouldn't be able to travel if there was no... Right, there's no traveling forward if you don't... If there's no gravity involved. So just keep that in mind. What I'm talking about is using it. Right. Feeling it and using it and letting it be part of your run. Running is free falling. Yeah. So when you're running on a treadmill, that's when you can say, I can just pull.
Okay.
Because on a treadmill, there's no falling. However, the pose becomes very important on a treadmill. Holding yourself upright is really important on a treadmill because, again, I don't get to there's no rest on a treadmill.
Right.
So on a treadmill is a great place to feel that if I hold my pose and simply pull, I will always be pulling to pose. Okay. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. The belt's moving, not my body. Right, so just understand, guys, that running itself is free falling. So you can run. So when you say running on a treadmill, so you're really pulling on a treadmill.
Yeah.
You know that
makes sense. Yeah.
It's the action of running, which is great. But running itself is free falling. So when you go out to practice that, this is where the challenge lies. When you were a little kid and you just went running, or you didn't go running for exercise, but say you're a little kid and your friend says race you to the tree. Yeah. You looked at that tree and that was your fall point, just so you know. It wasn't how you were really thinking, but you literally let your body free fall to that tree. Your focus was that tree. Yeah. You didn't care how you got there. You just wanted to win.
So let's talk about that free fall. And we do this in the videos that you've done. You kind of open up your chest and you open up your arms, kind of like, who was the guy in Titanic? Yes. I totally think of Titanic. But honestly, I'm not falling that far as an average runner. I'm nothing. like a degree. Yeah. It's really just taking my center of mass and moving it
1 degree forward.
1 degree forward, yeah. Like putting it, what do they call it? Being over your skis, right?
Yes,
so that you can actually let gravity take the body mass.
Or someone that's forward. Pedaling up a hill. Why do they lift up? Why do they stand up?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Take their body weight up and forward. It's much easier to go up the hill. But do you see anyone on a bicycle standing up to go downhill? Of course not.
No, let's talk about that. So this was what made me think of this. I think we were talking about biking. And that idea that as a biker, if I'm going up a hill, I don't turn up the resistance on my bike and muscle through the going up. No, you turn down the resistance, right? And you get up and you pull.
You
unweigh yourself, right? And you lean forward to get yourself propel up the hill, and then of course you sit back and you just let yourself take the gravity as you're going down the hill. That's a great analogy for how people have to think about running and running uphill as well, right? It should be quicker movements. It should be less less effort. I was going to say less effort. So that's really what I want people to bring back this week as you're going out there and you're running is, yes, your job is to pull, but you can't forget the fall and the pose that come before it. Right. You can't.
Well, and here's, and like you just said, in the beginning you're going to overpull, which is fine.
That's just part of it.
And I'm really trying to help people because Valerie, didn't take the fall seriously enough.
Right.
I really focused on pull to pose probably for 2 solid years without focusing enough on falling. And I could pull. Boy, I still can. But I wasn't getting any better. My running was the same as it was before I started the pose, and I felt like my hamstrings were always kind of tight and tired. So, when I reached back out to Dr. Romanoff, and I was like, I'm doing all the drills, I'm doing all the pulling, I'm doing everything you say, and he was like, you're not falling.
Yeah.
And at first I was a little bit upset, what do you mean I'm not falling? I'm doing everything you say. And he was like, you're not. I'm telling you, you're not falling. So honestly, guys, I had blocked it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
I really thought I was falling. Valerie was like, I'm falling. And he's like, you're not falling. How did I know that? Or how would I have known that? You understand? I would have run the rest of if I had never kept up my coaching with Romanoff,
right,
I would have probably kept running all this time with just pulling.
Yeah.
And so I tell people, it is natural as you run more and more to connect more, of course, with falling. And when we watch these elite runners, that smooth aspect you see, that's from hours and hours and years of putting themselves in the right pose. Yeah. They don't recognize that, but watch any group of elites. Watch the front of any race you want, sprinting or long distance, and every one of them is holding the correct pose to use the most amount of gravity they can. Right. And we have a range of 0 to 22.5 degrees. So Usain Bolt, for example, he fell at 21.5. It's anyone that watched him run would never argue, wow, that man extremely efficient and really didn't fit the prototype. 6'4", I think he is, really tall. So of course people, it doesn't matter, but you could see when he ran, that guy's got talent.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Now we're watching Kipchoge, and of course we have great women out there running. And all of them, if you watch them, have high stride frequency. They're holding their shoulders over their hips. They're doing the movements that we talk about.
Yeah.
However, when you watch people that have naturally adapted and highly skilled, which is what we see, they don't know how they got there. It's natural for them.
Yeah.
So then when we try to mimic them, what do? We try to move our arms and feet.
Right, and that's funny because bringing it back to that, what do they look like? I always call it, it's like a gazelle. It's like, or we even joke about a duck, right? That their body is all in place and it's their feet moving really fast underneath them. Right. But they don't bounce, they don't shift. They just move through the air. They glide.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I want you guys to think about as you're working on your pole. That gliding comes from holding that pose and falling and just letting yourself feel gravity.
And what's so amazing, guys, I cannot get this to people enough. And this is why I do it. I still get so excited. Most of the runners that come to Run RX, one are injured, unfortunately, right? But most of the runners we get, guys, are middle to back of the pack.
Right.
We've had some front of the pack. We love it. It's a lot of fun. But 99% of who comes into Run RX is struggling. And most of them, when I show them, you guys are on the ground a long time, which is a lot of impact on the joints, and you're missing that opportunity to fall. We all run through the pose. Every single runner runs through the pose. Think of the difference if you were doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
See, that's the difference. The intent is different when I'm actually know I'm in pose and I'm pulling to pose. And when I give someone a gait analysis and they have zero fall, they've missed the whole opportunity to fall simply because they didn't know.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they go from 0 to say 1 degree, which seems like Usain Bolt run 21.5 degrees.
Yeah, you're like,
Well, so what?
Yeah.
If I can do 1 degree, guys, 2 degrees, all of a sudden you're running.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that come into Run RX never ran because they never got to experience that part of running. And so the challenge is you have to work with yourself, of course, and experience something you've not experienced before, which is falling on purpose.
Right.
And that's a lot of fear.
And I was going to say, then there's the combination of I'm going to lean forward, which we don't want them to do.
I'm going to face plant.
I'm going to face plant, so I get fearful, and so I actually lean back without realizing it.
Correct.
So there's a lot of that comes into it. So, okay, guys, I hope you'll join us next week for our 100th episode. Woohoo! See you next week.
Thank you for joining us on the Run RX podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.